Welcome guys to this video. On this one we are going to be looking at stored procedures. The term stored procedures is all about a way to hide complex SQL logic inside the database. And this complex SQL logic could be like combining a create, read, update, and delete statement as a single statement or query, which we would then save inside the database, and then we can be able to call it in our code or application. We can perform queries involving joins, aggregations, and filtering. It can also be used for error handling, and it can take inputs and also give out outputs. And stored procedures is a big topic of its own. So if you're going to be working with relational databases, you need to know it. And for this video, my focus is how to use SQLALCHEMY to create and use it. And if you plan to follow along, let's make sure you have everything set right. You open these extensions and you're going to look for this. This is what I'm using to visualize my database. You search for it, you install it, and you open it here. And up here, you can click on this add connections. You can add a name here. This could be just a name to differentiate all your connections. Then you add your username for the database name, the password you save, and then you connect. And then you up here, this is where you can open your database, and open here you can view your tables. And I'm going to, since we are looking at procedures, well, first let's open our DB engine and look at our connection. So I've already imported this from the previous videos, gotten our environmental variables, our deep database URL, which I always call connection strings, and created a metadata object to create all of these tables. But the tables we are going to be needing for this is just the users, orders, and other counts table for this one. So here, for us to create this, we are going to say tables is equal to, and inside here we are going to list out the tables that we only need for this one. And then we can save. This should be others. And then we can open our terminal and we can run. And the table should be created. So let's go ahead and start. So inside of this procedures directory, I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call this procedure.py. And inside there, I'm going to import DB engine. I'm going to import all. And I'm going to start by creating a procedure that is going to take in a username, a user email, and the user that is for the users table. And it's going to take these as parameters, and then it's going to create a user. And this same procedure is going to confirm that email does not already exist. If it already exists, it's going to throw a custom error that we are going to create. If not, it's going to create a new user and then create an entry in the other counts table. And for the new user, set the other count colon to an initial value of 0. Because here, the way we are going to be doing this is whenever a new user is created, we are going to use the stored procedure to automatically create an entry in the other count table for the user, and we are going to set the value, which is other count, to 0. We're not going to do it by code, we're going to do it by using the procedure. And whenever the same procedure is going to handle a situation where a user makes an order, and the procedure is going to increment the order count excuse me, for that user by 1. So let's do it. So we are going to start by creating, okay, let's import test from SQLALCHEMY. We are going to be using test to be writing the raw SQL queries, which is going to be for creating procedure. and we define this variable that is going to store the procedure for us. And then we are going to call test, and inside here is where we are going to write this procedure. So to start creating a procedure, we have to use the SQL command, which is create procedure followed by the name of the procedure, and I'm going to call this add user, then followed by opening brace and closing brace. And then inside this opening and closing brace, this if since this procedure is going to be taking inputs, which is the username, email, and age to be able to create a user. So we are going to define this what is going to the input is going to be taken inside of these braces. So inside there, we are going to first personate in. So the way we do it is we define the parameter. We first let the database know that this is an input by using the in, which signifies input, followed by the name of the parameter, and we have to also define the type. Then we do the same thing for the email, which is an input, and the name of the parameter is email, and the type is a voucher. And then we are going to do the same thing for the age, which in this case is an integer. So this is the way we define the parameters that we are going to be using for the procedure. So the next thing we are going to do is the logic of a procedure, and to start defining what we want to do with this parameter that this procedure is going to be taking, we are going to start with the word begin. This word signifies the start of a procedure. So if there is any variable that we want to use later in the procedure, we have to define all of them at the beginning. That is after this keyword begin. As many as we want to use, we have to define it under it. And also, and just as we've declared the type of these inputs, these parameters, we have to also declare the type of the variables. So to do that, we are going to use the word declare followed by the variable that we want to use. And I'm going to be using this existing email variable. This existing email, I'm going to use it to for us to create a user. I'm going to take this parameter and I'm going to go through the table and check if the email exists. If that email exists, if it exists or not, we are going to save it into this existing email. Also, I'm going to declare another one up here, new user ID. When we create a new user, we need to get the ID from the inserted ID. So we are going to be saving it into this new user ID. So the next thing we are going to do is to check if the email already exists, and we have to first read the email into the variable, this variable that we just created. So to assign the value to a variable, we have to use the select statement. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to say select email into, so we are you're going to select it into this variable that we declared up here into existing email from the users table, where email is equal to this new email. So we are selecting, what we are doing here is we are saying, telling the database to go check this parameter email, this new email, and check if it exists. If it exists, we want to save it into this existing email. And I'm going to say limit 1 because that's all that we want, and then we close it with semicolon. And then the next thing we are going to check is if the existing email, this existing email, if it has a value. If it has a value, it means that the email exists and we cannot create a user. So we are going to throw an error. If it does not have a value, we are going to go ahead to create this user. So we move down here, we are going to use the if statement. We say if existing email is not null, then if it's not null, it means that the user already exists. Then we are going to throw an error. And to throw an error, we are going to use the signal keyword followed by the SQL state. and there's this error code which is 45000, and then we are going to set a custom message by saying custom message test, and we are going to set it as duplicate email. You can just add switch to a valid email, and then we edit with a semicolon, and then down here we say else. So in this else, just like writing your functions, if the existing email, if it's empty, it means that the user does not exist in the table. So you're going to go ahead to create the user. So we say insert into users, and we pass a name, email, age, then don't forget the created at and the updated at, and then down here we define the values, and these values for the name is going to be the name from the parameter, for the email is going to be email from the parameter, age is going to be the age from the parameter. So we say new age, and then we say new email, and then we say new age. And also don't forget we have to fill in the created at and the updated at, and to do that we just use the now function, which is where we can get the date, and then we end it with a semicolon. So now if a user is inserted, we have to get the inserted ID to use it to add an entry for the user in the other counts table. So inside this same else statement, we are going to say set new, this variable that we declared there, we are going to set it to the last insert ID, which is where we can get the last inserted ID for this user, which is this one that we just inserted. And then the next thing we're going to do is to set the other count column of the user to initial value of 0. That is, make an entry for this user that we just added. So we're going to say insert into other counts, and passing user ID, other count, created that, and updated that. Then down here we pass in the values, and for the user ID, we are going to use this variable that we already set, that we got from the last inserted ID. So we pass it in here, followed by the other count, which is we are going to set to the initial count of 0 because the user has not made any order. And then the created that, we are going to set it to now. Same thing with updated that, we are going to set the values to now. And at the end here, we are going to say end if, and we close it with a semicolon, same with this part. And then to signify that we are done with creating a procedure, at the end we are going to have to call the keyword end. This is what signifies the end of a procedure. We are going to write another procedure to be able to demonstrate how to write a procedure that is going to take input and can return output. This one that we have written here is only going to take parameters and it doesn't return anything afterwards. So this one is we are going to use it to write a procedure that is going to be able to create an order for the user in the orders table, and then update the order counts table for that user by increasing the order counts of the order counts table by 1, and then return the number of orders the user has made, and also return the number of users in the users table. So down here I'm going to create this and I'm going to call tests. So we are going to start the same way by saying create procedure followed by the procedure name, which is add order, and then inside there I'm going to pass in an input which is a user ID for creating an order, and another input which is item name, which is the order that the user has selected. So we are going to declare an output parameter that is going to hold the number of times the user has made an order. And to do that, we are going to use the word out. We've been using in to declare the input for the parameter. So we are going to use out to declare that this is going to be an output parameter. And this parameter is user order count and it's going to be an integer. And also we are going to add another output parameter to return the number of users in the users table by using the word keyword out and tell that the type is an integer. As usual, we are going to start with begin, and then we're going to create an order for the user by inserting a new row into the orders table. So you're going to say it insert into orders user ID, the item, and created that. And down here we pass in values, which is new user ID and the item name, and then we call now. And then we are going to, after adding an order, we are going to increment the order count for this user in the order counts table. So down here, I'm going to say update order counts, and we are going to say set order count, which is the column. We're going to set it to, just in case if it already has a value that is not 0, so we are going to say order count plus 1. And then we are going to set the updated that to the time of now. Of course, we have to define the condition, that is where the user ID is equal to this new user ID from the parameter. And then we close it with a semicolon. And then the last thing we are going to do is to select the select and return the number of users in the users table by just calling the select statement. Select count. We want to select all the users, so we are going to select it into this users count here. I think I'm forgetting something. Okay, so we have to also retrieve the updated order count, and we are going to set it to this user order count, which is the output. So I'm going to do it down here. I'm going to say select order counts into, so I'm going to select it into this parameter that we have here from sure. So what we are doing is we are selecting the order count column. We are sending it into this user order count variable, which is on the parameter, which is an output, and we are selecting it from the order counts table, and we only want to select from the row where the user ID is this user that is making this order. And at the end there, let's not forget to add the end keyword and then save. So we are going to create a function that is going to take in any procedure, create it, and create another function that is going to call the procedure, with another function that is going to print out procedure. So down here I'm going to paste it in this. So this function is Let me import. So the way we are going to use this function is we are going to call this function by passing in these procedures that we've created here, and we are going to run this code. So it's going to create SQLALCHEMY is going to create this procedure and save it in the database. So if I should open my terminal and we have an error here. Colon, and then I'm going to save clear. I'm going to run this again. What does it say? It says add user already exists. Funny. So I'm going to open here, and if I open here, I'm going to refresh, and if we go to procedure, then we can see that the procedures has been created, and this is the create order. If you open it, so we can see that the same thing has already been done here. The procedure has been created. The same thing for the add user. You can see that it's already been created here equally. So now let's look at the way we are going to create a function to call this procedure that we just created. So I'm going to do this. I think let me close up here. And down here I'm going to paste in the function. So down here we are going to create values for creating a user, and also down here we are going to also create a value that is going to hold the procedure call. If you are calling the procedure, this is the way to call the procedure. We use the keyword call followed by the procedure name and passing all the values that the parameter that the procedure is going to need. So the next thing we are going to do is to call the procedure by using this function that we've created down here. So we know that this add procedure is only going to take parameters as inputs, and it's not going to return any output. So we are going to call it here. We pass this called procedure to this function, and we pass in this value. And now this procedure is going to come here. Is going to call the procedure with the values. And since we are not expecting any output, so we are not supposed to be printing nothing out. So what I'm going to do is we're going to call both procedures at the same time. Okay, so let's just call this one first and see what we are going to get. So I'm going to do this. Oh, okay, so the thing is I have to comment out this because we've already created the procedure. That's why I'm getting this error again. So I'll run this, and what does it say? Okay, so I guess the first call created is in the table. Let me reload. If I open the users table, so the first call created is, I'm going to delete it. So I'm going to call this again. So it says end of calling a procedure. So if we go back here and if we go to the users table, so we can see that we have the Johnson added, and in the other count an entry has been meant for it, and the other count column has been set to 0. So the next one we are going to do is we are going to call this order procedure, which is create order. We are going to pass in a user ID, an item, and it's going to give us the order count for that user and the number of users in the table. So as usual, the way we did it before, we use the call and we pass in the followed by the name of the procedure and then the parameter that the procedure takes. So this is the way we do it. For the inputs is the way we define the inputs parameter, and for the output we have to use the at symbol followed by the output parameter, and the same thing for the second one, which is the users count. And then we are going to create the value for making an order, and to get the return value from the procedure, we are going to use the select statement followed by the at symbol and then the output parameter, which is this. Let me divide this here so we don't get confused. And this, we are going to do this for the second one. Every output or return value that we are getting from the procedure, we have to use the select statement followed by at and then the name of that output parameter. So we are going to call the second procedure that is going to return one output, which is the user count. I'm going to call this one, which is going to return one, and then we call another one and pass in both of them. So this is the way we do it. We pass in this call out procedure, which is going to call the procedure, and we pass in the order values, which is going to make the order for the user, and then we pass in one output. So for this one, we only want to retrieve the user order count. So I want to show you that you can ignore the any other output, and you only retrieve the one output that you need to retrieve. And I'm going to save this. And so for this not to throw an error, where did I call it? So I'm not going to be adding another user. I'm going to comment this out, and we are going to be adding an item and retrieving the orders count for that user. And if I should run this, what does it say? Cannot add okay, so it's because I've deleted the previous user. So this current user has the user ID of 2, and I'll set it correctly. And I'm going to run this again, and we see that the result is 1. This 1 is the number of orders the users have. And if I should refresh this and go to order count table, we see here that the order count has been incremented by 1, and that is the result this has returned. So we are going to call this procedure again, and we are going to also call this one that is going to return the number of the users in the table. And I'm going to paste this in. So for this one, we are passing the procedure, the call procedure, we are passing the values. I can change this to PC, and then we are passing in the parameters that are going to be returning the return values. That's the users count and the users order count, which are, if you remember what we stated there, these are what are going to be giving us the return value. So the way I did it is I used the conditional statement to decide how we are going to be retrieving it. So when we pass in this user order count, the function is going to get the number of order for that user, and it's going to save it to result 2, and it's going to take the number of users in the table, and it's going to set it to the result 3, and we are going to print them out. So let's run this and see. So if you can remember previously, the order count for this user is 1, and because we called this function right here, and the
other count was incremented to 2. That's why we're having the result 1 as 2. And then the second function called incremented the other count by another 1. That's why we're having the result 2 as 3.
So if I open this table, if we go to the other counts, we are seeing that the number of other count is 3, which is what we have here. And this is the number of users in the table, which is what we have here, which is only one user that we have in the table.
So I hope I explained this enough, and please do not forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. On the next video, we are going to start looking at the object relational mapper.